Hello and welcome to this Swift programming video. My name is David Thorne. In this Swift programming video, we're going to be talking all about the file manager. I'm going to be introducing you to the file manager with some basic commands, some basic functionality, like how to check if a file exists, check if a folder exists, and how to read a file. Just basically the fundamentals. Rather than explanation, let's just jump straight into demonstration. So what I have here is just basically a folder here that we've got called the files, and we've got a file.txt, just to show you how we can check to see whether or not this file exists first of all. And then also check to see whether or not this files is a directory or is it just a normal file. So what we have to understand is that the file manager, first of all, is part of Foundation. And it has a default version of it. You could create one if you wanted to, but it's just better to use the default one all the time. Now, when we say manager, we want to basically then work out whether or not a file exists. Okay, and for this example, the path is going to be users. And then desktop, and it's going to be YouTube, and it's going to be Swift, and it's going to be file manager, and it's going to be then files, and it's going to be file.txt. All right, this is the file that we are looking for. So we're going to now take this one path, and we're going to say file path, and this just can stay a string. All right, and inside of this, you can see here file exists at path. The file manager, if it requires a URL, it will ask for a URL. Otherwise, we're always talking about a path, all right? Just basically a normal string path. And when we're talking about a file, we're not necessarily talking about a regular file, as in like a text document or a Word document or an image file, a video file, and so on. We're talking about a file, basically anything that's on the machine. So a directory can be classed as a file as well. It just happens to contain other files too. A directory doesn't have any contents, it just has sub files, all right, or inodes. Okay, but let's not dig too deep. So all we care about is whether or not this file exists. So right now we're going to say the file path, and if we look what it returns, it will return true if the file at the specific path exists, or false if the file does not exist or its existence could not be determined. All right, so let's just say if it if it doesn't exist, then we're going to say file does not exist. All right, otherwise we're going to say file does exist, and we'll just come in here, exit 1 on this. So let's just run run it here, and you'll see that file does exist. And if we just change the file name, say file does not exist. All right, so now let's do the parent directory. So we're going to say parent directory, and we'll remove this, and we'll take this away, and now we'll say parent directory, and this time we can say basically if file exists, and this time we're going to say parent directory. So say this time parent directory does not exist, and here we can say that the parent directory does exist and the file does exist here. All right, so parent directory does exist, and if we change the files here, you'll notice that the parent directory does not exist, and the file, and we obviously exited here because the parent directory doesn't exist, so there's no point going to the file does exist. Let's just change that from 1 to 2. All right, so now if you are just given a path here and you don't know whether it is a directory or whether it is a file, and you want to check first of all, is it a file or a directory? So what we can do here is we can say manager, and then file exists is directory. Okay, so there's another overload that we can use here. So we can say parent directory first of all, and here we're going to need a let's just go over here. Here we're going to need an Objective-C ball. All right, don't get too worried about this. We're going to talk about this in a second. So this has to be a variable because we're passing it by reference, and it's an in-out parameter. And so we're just going to say is a directory here, and this is going to be an Object-C ball, and we're going to say it's false in the beginning, and here we have to pass it by a reference. All right, now the file exists is going to check to see whether or not the existence is there, right? So we can take this now and we can place it in here instead, all right? Because now if the existence of that one file doesn't exist, if this one directory doesn't exist, it's going to come here anyway, all right? However, if that one folder does exist, and we want to check now, is this a directory, and we're Boolean value. So if it is a directory, this is going to be set to true. If it isn't a directory, then we can assume it's a regular file, all right? So let's just come to here now, and Xcode crashed. So let's just come here again now and say, basically, if is directory Boolean once again, and we can say print and is, so parent directory is a directory. Okay, and now when we run this again, you'll see that we get parent directory is a directory, parent directory does exist, file does not exist. All right, so let's now run this one again, and you'll see that parent directory does not exist. So we now know that we get to this point by checking the because we know we've got a file and it does exist. But what about this time? Rather than saying parent directory, we're going to say file path. Actually, we'll say here, and to be double checking this, we'll say file path, and we'll say here file does not exist here. But this is one is going to set is a directory. So let's just change it. Say is file a directory. It seems a bit silly, but we'll just do it for the sake of the example. So now we know that the parent directory is a directory, and now we want to check to see here is file a directory. All right, so file is a directory, which would seem a bit stupid because it's not a directory. You see, file does exist, and so here now we want to check to make sure that file is not a directory, and parent directory and file is a regular file here, right? So now we can see that file is a regular file and it isn't a directory. So it's really important that if you want to be able to list, for example, the contents of a directory, then you need to be able to distinguish between whether or not it's a file or whether it's a directory. And so let's just say contents. We're going to have to wrap this in a do catch block here. And so we're going to say contents is equal to try, and we're going to say manager, and we're going to say contents of directory at path. And now we know the parent directory, all right? And when we just print this contents out, just to show you what we get, we're asking to access the desktop, and you can see that we get file.txt. Let's just come into our folder now, and let's create a other directory here. And now let's run this once again. You can see we get other directories. So let's now change these contents. So tuples here, and we're going to say contents.map, and this time we're going to return $0 for the actual name of the file, and now we're going to the contents of directory. Now here we will say var and directory, and this is going to be then Object-C here once again, and we know it's a file already because it's just told us it's a file. So we're going to say manager file exists is a directory, and we know that we've got the parent directory, and plus is this, and then plus then $0, and we're going to say underscore here, and now we can come to here and say here Boolean value. All right. Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, we now need to come with inside of here, right? And this now tells us whether or not, and we can return this,
Now it tells us the first property of the part of the tuple is going to give the file name, or the file name, and the other thing is going to say whether it's a directory or not. And now we can print out our tuple instead. And here you can see file.text false, this dstore, and then other directory is true. All right, so this shows you how you can now work out whether something is a file or not. And obviously, we could obviously filter out here if filter and if filter $0 is equal to this here is not equal to this here, and we can run it again and we don't get the dots, but let's just say that we don't want the ds store here, and now we know that we only get the files that we want to have. All right, so with that said, I hope that you've got something out of this one video. This is a quick introduction to the file manager, and here we've seen how we can check to see whether a file exists, to check to see whether the file is a directory or it is a regular file. And this is the distinguish I want you to remember, is that a file is a file, all right? And a regular file is one that you've got contents, and a directory is one that has other file handles or other files within inside of it, right? And I want you to get into the understanding that all files on the system are basically inodes, all right? And the whole file system is made up of lots of inodes, and they have a name, and then they are sat in a specific location. Because when you start working with file systems, it's important to understand the lower level information, because then you'll get a better understanding of it. Because when you want to work out the permissions of directories or files and so on, it's really important, or it's worthwhile to understand these types of things. With that said, I hope you've got something out of this one video. There's going to be other videos to follow on this topic as well. Yeah, if you got anything out of it, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and do all of the other social media things out there that you can do. And yeah, if you've got any questions, feedback, or concerns, then don't hesitate to start a conversation in the comment section down below. With that said, my name's David Thorne. Thank you very much for watching. Ciao, ciao, and goodbye.